Okay, speed tutorial. I'll just turn this on here. So I have just a basic scene. Got a little cube, an enormous plane, and sun and sky. So the student is working on a render that puts the ocean far in the distance. So I don't need exacting detail. I just need a little indication that there's an ocean way off in the background, and also maybe just slightly animating the waves, the appearance of the waves in that scene. So we don't need to do a big simulation and create a big ocean object. I just need a texture that's going to appear like there's a little bit of wave action far off in the distance. Easy enough. So I have created Redshift standard material. This is working from Cinema 4D 2023, so I'm using the standard there. And I'm going to go ahead and just jump in. I'm going to turn actually this Redshift off, and I'm going to double click, and let's do a little housekeeping here. We're just going to dock that. So I have my shader here that I'm going to work with. All right, so all I really need here is a bump material. I'm not going to be close to it, right? I don't need uber detailed water. I need a noise texture and a bump node to control that. So let's go up and add those. The first one, I'll just type noise, and there's the max on noise. I'm going to double click and add that there, and a plus sign again. And let's get bump, and I want the bump map. Not doing anything fancy with a blend or anything. Okay, so we need the out color. I'm going to drag and drop onto the bump map, and I need it to go into the input for that texture. And then I'm going to take the output and put it into the bump map that's here. So already you can see something changed on my viewport to let me know that to represent what's changed here. This is not very accurate, right? And as a default, Cinema 4D is set up to kind of work on the low end of giving you these representations of these noise shaders. But you can get a better sense of what these look like if we come up to where we are, the options, and turn on the high quality noise. So I'm not going to quite turn that on yet. Let's go back to the little render, and what you might see is these little dimples. In fact, they're kind of hard to see here, right? So this is just the noise texture, and it's kind of like a dotty little dots, right? Or it's noise, just a standard noise. So it almost looks like the surface of like an orange or something. So I don't think that texture is going to work very well for us. I'll turn that off while I'm working. And in fact, now that we've seen what the render looks like and how different they are from each other, I'm going to go back up to the options and turn on the high quality noise. And you can see I now get a clearer representation of what my noise looks like. It's just that kind of dimpled surface. So if you don't want to have the render running at the same time, options, high quality noise, HQ noise. All right, so let's dive into this noise parameter. And right now the type is noise, which could be okay. There are other ones to use inside of here. It will give you various effects. I'm going to go with the wavy turbulence. And again, this looks similar, right? It's just so small in its scale. So down here, if you're at home, if you're working on this, or in the lab, this texture will probably be folded up like this. But I want to get actually to the inputs is what I really want. Still going to leave the source as object. You could change this as far as how it's mapped to the world and whatever the UV coordinates are, right? I'm going to leave it just to object. And it's just how it's mapping it to that surface. I could change the scale just so you could see. So if I change this to 10, I get something larger. It just increases that volume of the noise itself. Maybe I'll just leave that at like 3. And again, this would be the overall dial that you should use as you're trying to make it look like the distance that's represented in your scene. How far away is it, or how close is it? This is where you might want to change that. Just keep in mind that we're just using this as a bump map, so you're not going to get a fluid simulation out of this. This is meant to do something in the background. So I'm going to leave this at 3. And then the other thing is there's ways to modify the scale through the X, Y, Z, or the UVW. It's just how it's stretched through the space. So this is the X direction side to side, and I'm just going to make that something bigger, like 5. So you can see these are now stretched out from each other. If I do a render, you get something that's a little more wave action. They're maybe stretched out a little too much. So I'm going to go back here. Let's do 3.5. Seems a little bit better. The other thing too is depending on the effect that you want. This is subtle, right? What's going on? I want something a little more pronounced. So within the bump map, I'm not really going to change anything that's here. I just want to change the height scale, and maybe we'll just go with 3, something that you can clearly see, right? So already that's not bad, and I'm going to go back to, I'm going to turn that off. All right, so let's recap just a little bit. You can change the type, right? I can change its overall scale, and then within that scale, it kind of offset the scale, right, to stretch it one way or the other. Again, if I went with 10, big long stretches across there. So you have to do this to taste. The last thing would just be the animation speed. And let's see how well, I haven't experimented with this part. Oh, I can see it subtly changing. All right, you can see it just subtly moving through that space. Now, again, this is not perfect. They're not kind of moving through space. I'm going to assume maybe we don't need that, though you could animate the offset so that it's moving forward through space. So I don't know, maybe if at the very beginning I put this at 0, I wonder if it needs to go in the negative actually. Right. Oh, and then the offset, let's just say -1. And let's see if that just drives it over time. Yeah, in fact, you can just see it. See how it's just moving through the space very quickly. All right, so let's not do that. Let's do 0.1. And because it's animating, it's dealing with that offset, right? You can see it's moving forward. Let's do 0.001. It's just the tiniest of the tiny. It's gradually moving forward. Maybe 0.002. And maybe the animation speed can be bigger. And again, you will have to do a test. How fast that's changing will be based on what your needs are. Right? And again, I've used the wavy turbulence. It's up to you, whatever one you want to try. Some are going to give you what you want more than others. Maybe just turbulence itself works okay. I'm kind of down with the wavy turbulence though. Anyways, so I'll leave it with that, and let's just do a little IPR. So you probably maybe turn your render settings down, do a small render so you can get a sense of what the speed is, do a little test render of 60 frames, and you should just be able to let it run. So tiny little tweaks down in here on the input will derive some of that animation. And this is pretty standard, right, with the setup of these materials. All right, under 10 minutes. Happy rendering.